What he said 24 hours ago is a threat. It's very serious. Should the world, and more importantly, should Kim Jong-un take that literally?
I think what his point was is not necessarily literally as in, we're going to come after you. It was a defense is what he was saying. He's saying America is not going to be screwed with. For the last 8 years, we've had a policy of let's go ahead and go to the world. Let's go to China and let them take the lead. Let's go to the United Nations. Let's see if sanctions work. It has gotten us to the point where they have at least what we think is 60 nuclear weapons, miniaturized weapons, and including a missile system that can reach probably half of the United States of America. So I think the president's point is what this whole idea of being PC and kumbaya and let's be always calm and collected has gotten them closer to them being able to bully everyone in the world. They've already threatened Guam before. They've threatened America before. They put propaganda out there. And I think the president's point is, I'm not screwing around with you for another 4 years.
Sure, but the implication, as we just heard in the State Department briefing, is what the president said. It implies that use force with force, right? That nuclear
Well, I think his
could
point
be
is that we're not just going to have diplomacy on the table, and you're not going to get to keep going forward and marching and threatening the world.
So you believe that? So
I absolutely believe that the president is making it very clear that the use of force is an option that I'm not going to run away from. If you think you can continue nuclear tests, continue a nuclear program, continuing threaten the world and directly saying you're coming after the United States of America, you need to know this is a new day. The last 8 years of a policy that allowed you to get those weapons and to be this bully, we're not going to let you have another 4 years of that.
Okay, Rick Wilson, I want to make sure I get you in, also just responding to the same question and also just responding to Ben. What do you think?
First off, Ben's answer to you betrays a level of naivety about nuclear weapons and about the Korean Peninsula in specific that is utterly staggering. That was some weapons-grade stupidity right there. Because the fact of the matter is, you don't threaten people. The deterrence model is this: you say to another country, if you hit me with nuclear weapons, I will respond. Therefore, neither country does it. You don't say, if you talk bad about me, if you threaten me, I could respond with fire and fury. That's not a code word for some little tap on the wrist. That's a code word for the first use of nuclear weapons. This is entirely out of the bounds of what a nation like ours should do.
First of all, we could level
North Korea into a shimmering plane of glass.
And it doesn't mean that we're going to use nuclear weapons. This is the part where I say you're being irresponsible, because you're saying that the only option America had would be nuclear weapons.
No,
if
Ben,
you
I
know
didn't say that at all.
anything about what we would do with North Korea, it would probably be going after the bunkers that carry
them. In fact, deterrence and diplomacy have worked for this country for generations. And the fact of the matter is, the failures of administrations of both parties over the last 25 years have led North Korea to be where it is now.
No,
you cannot argue.
You're saying that over the last 8 years.
A military strike on North Korea, even in a non-nuclear strike, will not result in the deaths of millions of South Koreans, 100,000 Americans.
Listen to one thing you just said here.
Ben, listen, this is a matter by which you have displayed your absolute ignorance of the Korean Peninsula.
You can name call all you want to, but you're not talking about the reality of the facts.
We're a military operation. This is not something we're a military operation that you throw off the back.
Let me go back into the point that the president was making.
Could possibly lead to anything except incredibly damaging and horrifying.
Let me go back into the point.
South Korea.
Okay, let me go back into the point here. What you're missing, obviously, is you're implying that somehow over the last 8 years, our policy of 100% diplomacy and deferring to Japan and the United Nations has somehow been a success. It's been a total failure. You and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it wasn't for the fact that they've been able to do exactly what they've done with their nuclear program, and including have the ability to reach half the United States of America. If we keep going down the road that you're going down and what you're saying is successful, then what does failure look like to you? 60 nuclear weapons you're saying is successful? Having half of America be reached by North Korea is successful?
I just said that the failures of administrations of both parties for the last 25 years in the Korean Peninsula have led us to this point. The fact of the matter is, though, that when you get to the level where you're joking about nuclear weapons and fire and fury, you're in a whole different zone. You're in a whole different
fire
zone.
and fury.
And it requires responsibility and
where
probity and judgment, none of which Donald Trump has in his strong suit. And
with all due respect,
he's sitting there saying fire and fury. That is a threat of a preemptive nuclear strike. Are you in favor of a preemptive nuclear strike?
This is where you're being chicken little. The sky is falling.
Preemptive nuclear strike on the Korean Peninsula?
Listen to the words coming out of my mouth.
Do you favor a Korean?
Listen to the words coming out of my mouth. If you're going to ask a dumb question,
do you favor a preemptive strike, Ben?
Okay,
it's a simple question. Yes or no?
Again,
do you favor a preemptive nuclear strike?
It's not as simple as that.
Ben,
You're turning
yes
us
or
into
no? It's a
second
simple
grade
question, dude.
here. It's not
on,
as simple
let
as
Ben-
what you're saying.
It's a
there are
simple
other
question.
options
Donald
on the table.
Trump
There are
today
other
laid it out on the
options.
table. You love the
Okay.
guy as that. That
You
seems
obviously
to be his first
don't
option.
care
Do you
what
think
anyone
that's
else
a great
says?
idea?
Okay, I'm going to finish now.
That's a great
hang
idea.
on, Rick.
It's simple, Ben.
Rick,
Rick,
hang on.
Rick.
Let Ben have a moment.
Listen carefully because you're having a hard time understanding this. There are other options militarily besides only nuclear options. Fire and fury does not necessarily mean only push the red button for a nuclear war. It is incredibly incompetent and ignorant to imply that the only option
By
that our
which you
military
therefore
has
accept the
is
fact
to
that
actually
South
do
Korea
nuclear war. That is
will
not what the
endure
president said
millions of
yesterday.
casualties.
That is not what the president
which
said
you
yesterday.
accept-
You're
by
implying that there's
which
only
you
one
then-
option.
by which
There
you
is more
then-
than one option.
by
Let's
which you
ask Rick.
then
Let's ask Rick.
accept-
Let me cut through this for a second. Ben, I totally understand the point you're making and how, Rick, you're arguing against it. But so, to Ben's point, if the diplomacy thus far has not been working, what, in your opinion, and you have the State Department saying let's give it a shot, let's get North Korea at the table. In your opinion, what is the best option here?
Look, you have to move this into a deterrence frame. And a
does that
deterrence
mean?
frame
is not threatening a preemptive strike. A deterrence
So-
frame is
so do
if
what we're
nuclear
still doing right now.
hang on.
weapons are deployed and used by North Korea. If nuclear
Okay.
weapons are deployed and used by North Korea, then a nuclear response is on the table. But you don't lay it out there. And
Well,
look,
you're gonna
Donald
wait
Trump
for
was
the-
not
you're gonna wait
talking
for them
about he was not
to
talking
launch
about a
them.
conventional strike.
You're
the
telling
language
me
there
that-
was hardly coded.
You're telling me the only time that the president can use the words fire and fury is literally if nuclear weapons are in the air? Are you literally
Ben,
kidding
if
me
you're-
right
if
now?
you're gonna pull something
that
out
is
of the
that is the
book of
worst foreign
Isaiah
policy I've
in
ever heard in
terms
my
of-
entire life.
Ben, there are boundaries and there are ways you talk about deterrence. General Mattis did it right today. Donald Trump shot from the lip, as he usually does, because he is ignorant of history, he is ignorant of strategy, he is ignorant of diplomacy, and he's certainly ignorant
I get
of
that
the
you don't like
use
Donald Trump,
of deterrence
but the
in
foreign
nuclear,
policy
in
you're
nuclear
describing,
warfare.
the foreign policy that you're describing has been a failure over the last year. When the president says he's going to protect and defend the United States of America, and then the only option you give the president is nuclear war, that just shows that you have no understanding
But
of
isn't
war.
No, Ben,
it-
the option is
hang on, hang on.
deterrence. The option
Hang on.
is active deterrence and diplomacy. You
We've
are
done
not
sanctions
going
to
to
this
allow
point.
you-
Let's move.
Ben, if
This
you
is- this
strike
is-
North Korea with conventional weapons, Ben, if you strike, and I ask you this question, if you strike North Korea with conventional weapons, you understand that the most heavily armored area of the world for artillery is on the South Korean border with North Korea. They will slog the hell out of South Korea, out of Seoul. This is not going to be pretty. And you're saying that you think there are no consequences to this kind of action, and it's really irresponsible.
No, what
Hang
I'm
on,
saying.
I want to stop. I want to just pivot, please. Let me just ask Ben to you, and then Rick, I want you to weigh in on the different messaging, right, coming out of the White House. So you have the language, fire and fury, that the president uses. Then you have the language that we've heard from both Tillerson and from Mattis. It's not all entirely on the same page. I don't know if you guys were listening to Admiral Kirby a second ago on how, I mean, essentially it's been a catch-up situation as this was off the cuff, Ben. So can you speak to the issue of
Look, I think the
not
president,
all being on the same page?
I think the president was being blunt and off the cuff. It was very clear from how he said that it was off the cuff. But I do think the tone
should
was
you be off, should you be
well,
off
I
the
think,
cuff on North Korea?
I think the words that people have obsessed with him saying are fire and fury are words that, you know what, do you want him to use a different word? His point was to speak directly to Kim Jong-un and to make it very clear that it is a new day. You're
but
not going to get away.
Give his administration a heads up. He didn't give his administration a heads up on using that kind of language about North Korea.
Let me say this. I think that there are multiple ways that you can deal with diplomacy. Only having a kumbaya diplomacy that we've gone, which is go to Japan, go to the United Nations, and all of a sudden we'll kind of set back a little bit. That has been a failure to the point where half of America is now at risk, and you have a crazy guy with nuclear weapons that he can actually deliver in a real capacity.
I know, but that still doesn't mean that the president
is,
should be speaking off the
right,
cuff,
no,
on North Korea.
my point is, his policy is we're going to be tough. Now, can you have good cop, bad cop with the State Department?
Right.
Absolutely. I think that's what you've seen today. I think what
How is that
Tillerson
most
is doing
effective?
today, well, I think you have to have more than just one avenue to talk to Kim Jong-un, because the one avenue of sole diplomacy has gotten us nowhere but a crazy guy who now has nuclear weapons that he can deliver to half the United States of America. It did not work for 8-9 years. We've literally been doing it since the end of the Bush time. So you're talking 9+ years, 9.5 to be conservative, and now he has more of an arsenal than he's ever had before, even while sanctions have been in imposed and we have new sanctions. You can do two things at once.
Rick, what do you
but the
think?
president is not going to sit there and be bullied by them.
What do you think of the good cop, bad cop
as he
routine?
always does, the president, as he always does, shot from the lip. He was riffing. He was whatever impulsive thing that drove him at that moment. And so, yes, you had to see the entire administration play catch up. And in a matter as consequential as a potential nuclear exchange, you have to have probity and you have to have judgment and you have to have discipline. And Donald Trump has never displayed those at any point in his life or his career. And so everybody that's scrambling, and by the way, I've talked to some of my friends in the military today who are in this world, and the sense was, oh dear God. It wasn't, hey, this is great, let's get on board with this great policy. It was, oh dear God, this guy has no idea what he's doing.
There was no policy that was announced. It was the president defending the fact that you have a leader that has nuclear weapons that he can deliver.
Become policy.
The policy of saying, if you continue to come after America or if you threaten America, we will defend yourself is a policy that I'm pretty sure almost every president in my lifetime has had.
He didn't mean,
it's not a new policy.
When he said fire and fury, he didn't mean a sternly worded letter.
So be kind and give him a hug and send him a gift? Is that what you want diplomacy to be for a guy with nuclear weapons?
Hey,
we love you?
Do you really believe that's what I'm suggesting?
I mean, that's a foreign policy over the last 9 years that has been a failure. So we have nuclear weapons that guy has now. So I would say it might be time to try something different.
You are unbelievably irresponsible and ignorant of the Korean Peninsula. It's astounding.
Okay, on that, we're going to go. Rick Wilson and Ben Ferguson, it's been a pleasure. Thank you both so much
Thanks,
for a healthy
Brooke.
dialogue. Thank you. Woo!